WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American over here in Germany, often tasting rare and exotic whiskeys. Today I have a single cask. This was a cask share. I'll talk about that in a moment. Now this is somewhat unique because Dumbarton is a silent or closed distillery. Whiskybase 232163. This is from a friend of mine, Tom, here in Germany. He has his own store, his own label. He is at a lot of whiskey fairs and sells a lot of bottles. And it's called Anam h-Alba. So you can see this maybe here, the label there. All right, very good. So what we have here is this was distilled on the 4th of December 2000. The distillery was closed 2002, so 2 years before it was closed. And it was bottled on the 1st of November 2022. So it's almost 22 years old, but it is a 21-year-old single grain. It was matured its entire life in a bourbon's hogshead. The number is 211888, and there were 259 bottles. So from the 250 liters that fit into a hogshead, at the end there was 181 liters left after 21 years, so they lost 30 of the 250 liters. Okay, about 1.5% angel share per year. Doable, and it's 51.2%, which is interesting. I would expect it a little bit higher, but that's just fine. All right, so now I've done this before. I'm going to do it again. I've done some of these cash shares, so you just understand what goes on here. Now, Tom, he buys a cask, and in this case, a couple of years ago, he bought a 21, or I'm sorry, he bought a it wasn't 21 back then. He bought a this one cask. He lives in Germany. Everything worked via email. He wasn't actually in the country. Didn't even see the cask before he bought it, but he trusts his whiskey broker in the UK to do this right, and he was offered a cask. He bought the cask for 9,103 euros. So just assume that 1-to-1 euros, dollars, UK pound, dollars, it's about the same, all right? Good 9,000 euros. So, and he kept it there for not that long because he only paid about 15 euros for the storage. So I have to pay for the casks I own between 10 and 50 euros per year to keep them in the warehouse. And there's insurance in there if their forklift kills it, but not insurance if it starts leaking. All right. So then he actually had to request samples. So someone actually in that warehouse went, took off the bung, put down the whiskey thief, filled up some samples, screwed on the top, wrapped them all up, sent them over to Germany, and Tom could try the whiskey he actually bought. And he apparently said, 21 years of age, it's ready. And so he had to have it regauged. Regauged is you actually have to measure the alcohol in there, and you have to figure out how much is in the barrel. So he found out it was supposed to be 259. It turned out to only be 255 at the end. That's why the label says 259, and that's why the label says, and it's still the right thing, it's 51.2%. So then you have to print the labels. So a label like this costs about €1 per label at the moment. Printing has gone up, everything's gone up. And you have to have someone to fill up the bottle for you. So you have to have a bottling plant that would actually take the barrel, empty it, fill it up into glass. You need to buy the glass. You need to buy the corks. You need to buy the capsules here. And you need actually a company to do this. So for the 255 bottles, it was 1,087 euros. So we're paying about 4 euros per bottle to bottle this, plus another euro for the label, so we're at 5 euros here. So you need a little bit of paperwork, you need a movement guarantee, you need to have a pallet and warehousing works, and then you need to actually have someone transport the bottles, put them into boxes, send them over to Germany. That costs, I think that's fairly cheap, 380 euros. So you're paying about €1.50 to get these bottles over to Germany each. from the UK because single malt Scotch, it says here, single Scotch whiskey, sorry, not single malt, single Scotch whiskey. It has to be, well, single malt has to be bottled. I'm not really sure about the regulations. Does single grain have to be bottled in Scotland? Single malt does, blended doesn't. All right, but he did that. He bottled it in Germany. Bottled in UK and brought those bottles over here to Germany. So we have we have to pay for the customs. We have a total of, from the 9,103 euros and 50 cents, we now have 11,090 and 30 cents. So not bad. But since we're over in Germany, we get to pay another 19% sales tax on everything we import into the country and also anything we sell in the country. So we had to add 19%, so that's another 2,107 euros. Now that makes a total of 13,197 euros from the original 9, which still is not bad. But don't forget, we still have to pay the excise man. The excise man over here in Germany is 13 euros and 3 cents per liter of pure alcohol. So for these 255 bottles, we had to pay, or Tom had to pay, 1,209 euros on top. So the 9,100 euros suddenly turns into 14,400 euros. And you notice that almost all the money you pay on top is going to be your sales tax, and the excise tax. All right, so we paid 9,000 basically here for the barrel. We paid 2,000 to get it bottled, and then we paid another 3,500 on taxes in Germany. 9, 2, 3.5. So from the 9,000, 4,500 on top to actually have that in my hand here. All right, so we have 255 bottles, which means we paid 56 euros and 50 cents. Now, what happens here is there were 51 shares. So each share had 5 bottles. So I paid originally a few years ago, I paid 178 euros and 50 cents to buy the cask together with Tom, and then I had to pay an additional 105 euros 40 for the taxes and for the bottling and for the shipment. So I paid a total of 283 euros and 90 cents to get my 5 bottles, which I think for 21-year-old grain, that's a decent price. I'm sure today if I would try to buy from Dumbarton a cask myself, I'm not going to get it for 9,000 euros anymore. Not a 21-year-old. All right. And so the way the business model works out here is about half of the cask shares remain with Tom. So he can now sell these not for 56, but maybe for 69.90. So about 30% we get as a retailer over here as a margin on top of our whiskeys. Some people do 40, some people do 50, but 30 is to be the seller of the whiskey, to be the retailer of the whiskey. 30% in Germany is the standard, the lower end of the scale here. All right, so yeah. So just a little bit of information about what a cask share program is. Now, the second thing I'd like to talk about before I forget is actually the distillery, because the distillery has a history that we don't hear much about. Now, in 1936, the Canadian distiller Hiram Walker, back then they were Hiram Walker, Gooderham, and Worts, purchased the blender called George Ballantyne and Son. And it had a sizable stock of whiskey, mature whiskey, and a brand, Ballantyne's. We still have it today. But it did not really have any distilleries in that deal. So it had already acquired, back then, Hiram Walker in 1930 had acquired Glenburgie. And in the same year, it actually bought Milton Duff. So we have Glenbergie, Milton Duff, which today belong to Pernod Ricard, and they were producing, those were the workhorses for the blends, but they had no grain. And no one was going to sell them any grain either. So what did they do? They were like, okay, good, we have to now go we have to go build our own grain distillery. So we're going to build a grain distillery, put a little malt distillery in the same thing, and we're at the at Dumbarton at the old Macmillan shipyards on the bank of the River Leven. Inver-Leven? Ah, we remember that name maybe. So they started distilling 1938. It was the largest grain distillery in Scotland at the time. And in 1938, they were producing right around 13.6 million liters of pure alcohol. By the time they closed it down in 2002, they were producing 113 million liters of pure alcohol a year. That's a lot. All right, so good. Now, they basically use corn from America and from Canada. And the reason why is they did not use the coffee still. Instead of that, they used a beer still. Now, it was the first to challenge the supremacy of the coffee still by installing American-styled stainless steel columns built by Vulcan Copper and Supply of Cincinnati, Ohio. And the continuous still unit had the ability to produce both grain spirit as well as neutral grain spirit. But it could only process maize, corn. All right, so grain. Do we say neutral grain spirit or do we say grain neutral spirit? So we have brandy, neutral grape spirit, and we have neutral grain spirit. So this is just above 96% alcohol. All right? So there's no esters, there's nothing left basically in that. So you can use it for medicine, you can use it for industry, you can use it for vodka, just put a little bit of water in there. You can use it as gin, put a little bit of water and botanicals in there. That's what neutral grain spirit is. Now, a grain whiskey has to be, is it 94.6%? Is the max that it can be distilled up to, and they distill up to 90 to 92%. So there's a little tiny little bit of the esters and so on in there still. All right, good. I'm going to finally pour some of this. So you've heard the story. Now, one little thing I have to talk about, the demise here of Dumbarton. In 1988, Hiram Walker was sold, at least Hiram Walker Scotland was sold to Allied Lyons. And so Dumbarton finally became a British company. So 3 years later, they mothballed the Inver-Leven distillery. 2002, they actually mothballed and closed down Dumbarton. All the buildings in the meanwhile have been demolished. First of all, they just demolished a lot of the buildings, kept one of the still houses. I thought there was what should have been a listed building, but hey, everything's been destroyed. And instead of that, they now have housing units there. So, a little bit like the Docklands of that area. All right, so no record of Dumbarton's history would be complete without mentioning the Scotch watch. You don't know the Scotch watch? The Scotch watch was about 100 plus Chinese white geese that Hiram Walker introduced in 1959 to protect Dumbarton whiskey stock from intruders. What happens if you get near geese? So they're like an alarm clock, an alarm system. All right, and it was type of a tourist attraction and so on. Balveni's actually advertised with it, and when it finally closed in 2002, a few years later after all the buildings were gone and the housing units were being put up, they actually relocated the last of the geese to the Glasgow Green. All right. So, if you know my channel, you know I compare things. So what am I going to compare it to? I have another closed distillery, another closed grain distillery at 21 years of age. This is Port Dundas. This was made on the 10th of October 2000, and this was bottled on the 10th of October 2021. So this is exactly 21 years of age. Not one day, 21. And this is 57% alcohol. Now, this was a refill bourbon hogshead. This was a bourbon hogshead as well. I got 255 bottles out of this. Here I got 160. 255, 160. 57% alcohol, 51.2. So, I don't know. Was there water added here? Does it say natural cask strength here? It says here, no, it doesn't. Oh, I have to ask Tom. It says non-chilled filtered. It says single cask bottling. It says no added color. And it says 1 of 259 bottles at 51.2%. So this says here, Single Grain Scotch Whiskey, a signature collection. This also does not say cask strength anywhere on it. All right, so who knows if water was added. Now, I'm not going to talk much about Port Dundas, but it was also closed, and this was the closest thing I could get. So this, as I said, is $69.90. This was $74.90. All right, so this, as I said, was I'm sorry, I did not say that. I sold 3 of my 5 bottles. I shared 1 bottle. I'm keeping 1 bottle. I sold 3 bottles, so I sold them for $69.90. All right, so there was 56. So I put 13 euros on profit for the 3 bottles I had here. Yay, shame on me, but that's the way I am a retailer, so I can do that. This probably has even more margin on with 74.90 euros. All right, so, but there were less bottles, so maybe it actually works out the same, because if I buy for a cask with 9,000 euros and have 255 bottles, and I buy the same cask for 9,000 euros, but I only get 160 bottles, that's going to push the price up a lot more. I don't know. I know both of the people who are the owners of these brands. I have to talk to them. On the nose, I like. By the way, all excitement over C+ whiskey. I get like a corn, almost like a, dare I say, bourbon. I get a little bit of wood char, and I get a little bit of a overripe blackberry. Over here, every time I nose this, I get a little bit of perfume. A little bit like rose petals. Not my favorite. This I like. This I can. Tiny, tiny little bit of ginger. As if the ginger has been laying around for like 6 months in a basket. Over here, we sometimes make, at least in my home, especially in the winter, we'll take fresh ginger and peel it and then put it into a tea. Make some ginger tea. It's good if you have a cold and so on. But if you wait a few months and then you peel the ginger, it has a little bit of a funky type of old spice to it. All right, good. I'm going to try this. 51.2%. Cheers. It's got a good mouthfeel. Barrel char. The 51.2, they don't bite. It doesn't hurt. It's exactly, if I were to dilute a whiskey down a little bit, that's what I would have chosen as well. Now, to be very honest, I can dilute this down a little bit more. And if I go down to the 46% mark, I'm going to get a whiskey that is even, for me, a little bit more flavorful. But that's just my personal opinion. I know I know every single time we do tastings, blind tastings, and I give people a whiskey with 40, I'll give them a 43, I'll give them with 46, I'll give them with a 48, and I'll give them with a 50. And they'll just try that, and it depends on what order we do it in, but let's just say we start with the 40, and it's like, oh, wow, something's missing. And it's 43 as well, okay, and 46, oh, now it's getting, oh, yeah, 48, 450, yes, finally. Do you have anything with even more? They are so cask strength spoiled that when they take a 40% whiskey, for them it's just watery. And 40% whiskey for the normal person in this world is not watery. It is very, very flavorful and very, very good. Now I know a lot of people know Jason, alcohol carries the flavor more. I'm not a proof hound like other people are. Mm, mm, mm. I believe and I feel that I actually get more flavor often, not always, often from a whiskey that has a lower proof. Alcohol can mask a lot of mistakes, all right? That's very, very nice. It's a little bit of that berry, a little bit of a strawberry, a little bit of that overripe blackberry, even a little bit of a yellow plum going on in there. That was a good cask. That was well done, Tom. All right, thank you. Um, Value for money as a cash share person. I had one cash share I was so excited about. Same person, same label, Glengoyne. I think it was an 18-year-old Glengoyne, something like that. I was like, oh, it was a great price as well. I opened it up, poured it, tried it with it. That's peated. There is no peated whiskey at Glengoyne. All right, I gave it to someone else. They said, yeah, there's peat in there. I said, yeah, I know, but it says Glengoyne on the label. Glengoyne prides themselves that no peat has ever touched their stills. I said, I don't understand. So I called up Tom and asked him. He said, yeah, it was a refill hogshead, and apparently the hogshead had been used for peated whiskey beforehand. Ah. And they just put Glengoyne into a peated hogshead. And the thing is as soon as someone at the distillery or at the brand, Agnes Dunn, no, that's Ian McLeod, they tried it, was like, oh, we made a mistake. Settle it off to an independent bottler, settle it off to a broker. We don't want anything. But he was allowed to use the name Glengoyne, and he was allowed to bottle a peated Glengoyne. Those bottles are long gone. And that was very, very nice. But otherwise, almost everything I've had from the bottle shares, I must admit, I've liked. Because, and I'm going to tell you the secret here, Tom can wait. He can say, okay, it's not ready yet. And if something just doesn't develop in the direction he wants to go, I had that with one of my casks in Germany, you can just recask it. So you can take a wine cask, you can take a sherry cask, you can take a port cask, you can take a rum cask and just put it in there for the next few years and just leave it sit and let it develop in the direction you need it. So there's everything he's filled up so far always is good in his opinion and usually good in my opinion. Well done, but the barrel chart is fascinatingly evident sometimes, not always, but every once in a while. So as a cash share, 21-year-old grain for 56 euros, C plus. A 21-year-old single grain for 69.90. That's my retail price. I'm sending to others. A C to C minus. Single cask, almost cask strength, probably cask strength. Okay, yeah, why not? Over here, the Port Dundas, 57%. Also 21 years of age, also a single cask. It is absolutely amazing how different these taste. It's night and day. This is, by the way, night. This is hot. This is sharp. This has heat, burns, and has not much flavor. Now I can dilute it down as well. So let's go to 51.2%. I have no idea if I hit that. But this still is so much better. And that's a little bit the question. Is it the distillery with the grain? Is it maybe this is wheat, maybe this is corn? Is it the casks that are being used? They're at the same age. They were probably matured in a very similar area. Port Dundas is not that far away from here, Dumbarton. But this is yummy, yummy. This is, let's see what else we can drink. That's that. All right. My question of the day. I gave you a lot of information about cask shares. I gave you a lot of information about the Dumbarton Distillery. My question of the day is, what is your favorite single grain from Scotland? Yes, I know we make single grain in Germany. Yes, I know we make single grain in Japan. Yes, I know we make single grain in Ireland. In America, we don't. It's called Bourbon, by the way. There are other rules. But in Scotland, there's two types of whiskey. There's single malt and everything else that's called a grain. Isn't that weird? If it doesn't fulfill the regulations for a single malt, it's a grain. Loch Lomond uses 100% malted barley from Scotland, but they put it through a continuous still, therefore it's a grain. You can take a pot still and put 95% malted barley in there and 5% rye, it's a single grain. If you do not fulfill all of the requirements for the single malt, it's automatically a grain. And so this is automatically grain, and different reasons made than this. Who knows? Thank you very much for watching, liking, subscribing, telling others about this crazy guy over in Germany talking about, in this case, single grain whiskey from Scotland. See you very soon. Bye-bye.